The rain hammered against the windshield of my rental car as I pulled into our driveway that October evening. 67 years old, and I still felt like a stranger coming home after these business trips. 3 weeks in Detroit, finalizing the sale of my manufacturing company, the business I'd built from nothing over 40 years. Margaret's silhouette moved past the living room window, but she didn't come to greet me. That should have been my first warning. We'd been married 43 years. Raised 2 kids, buried both sets of parents, survived cancer scares and market crashes. Through it all, Margaret had been my anchor. But lately, something had shifted between us like tectonic plates grinding beneath the surface, invisible but undeniable. I grabbed my suitcase from the trunk, my arthritis protesting in the damp weather. The garage door was closed, which was unusual. Margaret always left it open when expecting me home, knowing I preferred to park inside. I fumbled for my keys, rain soaking through my jacket. "You're early," Margaret said when I entered through the front door. No kiss, no embrace. Just those 2 words hanging in the air like an accusation. "Flight got moved up." I set down my suitcase, studying her face. At 64, she was still beautiful to me, silver hair she'd stopped dyeing during the pandemic, laugh lines that mapped our history together. But her green eyes, usually warm as summer grass, seemed guarded. "Everything okay?" "Fine." She turned toward the kitchen. "Dinner's not ready. I wasn't expecting you until 9. I followed her, noticing how she kept glancing toward the door that led to the garage. "I can help. Or we could order something?" No. I'll fix something quick." Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the refrigerator. "How was Detroit?" "Good. Papers are all signed. We're officially retired millionaires." I tried for levity, but it fell flat. "Margaret, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I'm just surprised. You should have called." In 43 years, she never complained about me coming home early. I wanted to press, but exhaustion won. "I'm going to shower and change." As I headed upstairs, I heard it, the soft click of the door to the garage opening, then closing. When I peered out our bedroom window, I could see light seeping from under the garage door. What was she doing out there? The next morning, I woke to an empty bed. The clock read 5:47 a.m. Margaret never got up this early unless something was wrong. I found her in the kitchen, fully dressed, making coffee with mechanical precision. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked. She startled, nearly dropping her mug. "Jim! You scared me." "Sorry." I poured myself coffee, noting the dark circles under her eyes. "Bad dreams?" "Something like that." She wouldn't meet my gaze. "I have book club this morning." "At 6 in the morning?" "We moved it earlier." "Betty has a doctor's appointment later." The lie was transparent. Betty Carlson had been dead for 2 years. I'd spoken at her funeral. I decided not to confront her about Betty. I thought I'd clean out the garage today. Haven't been able to park in there for months with all the junk. "No." The word exploded from her. She took a breath, modulated her tone. I'm reorganizing things out there. For the church donation drive. Please don't mess with it." "Okay." I watched her gather her purse with shaking hands. "Margaret, if something's wrong, you can tell me. Whatever it is." She paused at the door, and for a moment, I thought she might crack. Then she straightened her spine. "Nothing's wrong. I'll be back by noon." After she left, I stood at the garage door for a full minute, my hand on the knob. Trust and curiosity warred in my chest. Trust won. Barely. But over the next 3 days, the pattern continued. Margaret would disappear into the garage at odd hours. Late at night when she thought I was asleep, early morning before dawn, random moments during the day. She'd emerge looking flustered, sometimes with red-rimmed eyes like she'd been crying. I started keeping track in the notebook I used for business. Tuesday, 11:47 p.m., 90 minutes. Wednesday, 4:23 a.m., 2 hours. Thursday, 2:15 p.m., 45 minutes. Each time, She had an excuse ready if I asked where she'd been. Laundry. Looking for Christmas decorations. Checking the freezer. We had no freezer in the garage. By Friday, the tension in our house was thick enough to cut. We moved around each other like strangers, polite but distant. At dinner, she pushed food around her plate, lost in thought. The Johnsons are having their anniversary party tomorrow, I said. 40th. They asked if we're coming. I can't. She didn't elaborate. Margaret, please. Talk to me. I reached across the table for her hand, but she pulled away. I need time, Jim. Can you just give me time? Time for what? The question burned in my throat, but I swallowed it. Of course. That night, I lay awake listening to her breathing, knowing she was pretending to sleep just as I was. At 1:15 a.m., she slipped out of bed. I heard the soft pad of her feet on the stairs, the quiet click of the garage door. This time I followed. I waited 5 minutes before creeping downstairs, each step careful to avoid the creaky spots I'd learned over the decades. The house was dark except for that telltale sliver of light under the garage door. I could hear muffled sounds from within, movement, something being dragged across concrete, and was that singing? Margaret was singing. Soft and low, a lullaby I recognized from when our children were young. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. My hand froze on the doorknob. The singing stopped. I heard footsteps approaching and quickly retreated to the living room, pressing myself behind the grandfather clock we'd inherited from my father. The garage door opened, and Margaret emerged carrying something wrapped in a blanket. She cradled it against her chest like an infant. But we didn't have any grandchildren. Our son Michael lived in Seattle, childless by choice. Our daughter Sarah had died in a car accident 15 years ago, along with her husband. No children. Margaret headed upstairs with her bundle. I waited until I heard our bedroom door close before approaching the garage. The door was locked. She'd never locked it before. I retrieved the spare key from the kitchen junk drawer, my hands trembling like I had palsy. The garage was transformed. The usual clutter, old furniture, boxes of Christmas decorations, tools I'd accumulated over the years, had been pushed to the walls. In the center, she'd created a sort of room within the room using old sheets hung from the rafters. A soft glow emanated from within this makeshift sanctuary. I pushed through the sheets and stopped dead. A hospital bed occupied the center of the space, complete with monitors, floor stands, and medical equipment I recognized from my mother's final days. But the bed was empty, its sheets pristine and tucked with military precision. Around it, Margaret had arranged photographs, hundreds of them, covering every available surface. They were all of Sarah. Sarah at 5, missing her front teeth. Sarah at 16, in her prom dress. Sarah's wedding day. Sarah holding the pregnancy test, both her and David grinning at the camera. That was 3 weeks before the accident. She'd been 12 weeks along. In the corner sat a rocking chair I recognized from Sarah's nursery, the one she'd never gotten to use. Next to it, a bassinet filled with baby clothes, tags still attached. Pink and yellow and mint green, sizes that would have fit a newborn. My knees buckled. I grabbed the bed rail for support, and that's when I saw the journal on the nightstand. Margaret's handwriting filled the pages. Asterisk day 847, she visited again last night. Her hair is longer now. She says the baby is beautiful, has David's eyes but my nose. She says they're waiting for me. Asterisk. Asterisk day 848, Jim almost saw her today. I need to be more careful. He wouldn't understand. How could he? He didn't carry her for 9 months. He didn't feel her first kick. Asterisk. The entries went back years. 2.5 years to be precise. Right after I'd started taking more business trips, leaving her alone in this house full of ghosts. I heard the garage door opening behind me. Margaret stood there in her nightgown, holding the bundle I'd seen earlier. In the better light, I could see it was just old baby clothes wrapped in Sarah's receiving blanket from the hospital. You weren't supposed to see this, she said quietly. Margaret. I didn't know where to begin. How long has this been going on? Since you started traveling again. Since you left me alone with the silence. She moved past me to the rocking chair, sitting down with her bundle. She comes to me here. Sarah. With the baby. Sweetheart, Sarah's gone. She's been gone for 15 years. I know that. The words came out sharp, angry. Then softer. I know she's dead, Jim. I'm not crazy. But I see her anyway. Here, in this space I made for her, for them. Is that so wrong? I approached slowly, like she was a spooked animal. When did you set all this up? Piece by piece. The bed came from a hospital liquidation sale. The monitors don't work, they're just props. But they make it feel real. Like she could be here, recovering from giving birth, letting me help with the baby like we planned. The singing I heard? Sometimes I practice lullabies. For when I join them. She said it so matter-of-factly that it took a moment for the words to register. Margaret, no. You're not talking about. Not yet. But someday. When it's my time. She looked up at me with those green eyes, now swimming with tears. You got to say goodbye to your company, Jim. You got closure, a final sale, signatures on paper. What did I get? A phone call at 2 a.m. and a closed casket because the accident was so bad. I knelt beside the chair, my arthritis be damned. Why didn't you tell me? Because you'd have done what you're doing now. Looking at me like I'm broken. Having rational conversations about irrational things. You'd have taken this away from me, and it's all I have left of her. You have me. She laughed, but it was bitter. Do I? You've been gone more than you've been home for the past 2 years. Even when you're here, you're not really here. You're checking emails, taking calls, managing the sale. When did we stop being Jim and Margaret and become two people who happen to share a house? The truth of it hit like a physical blow. I'd thrown myself into work after Sarah's death, telling myself it was to secure our retirement, to leave something behind. But really, I'd been running from the grief, leaving Margaret to face it alone. There's more, Margaret said, standing up. She moved to a filing cabinet I hadn't noticed, half hidden behind a stack of boxes. From it, she pulled a manila folder thick with papers. I hired a private investigator. For what? The accident. Something never sat right with me about it. The other driver, he walked away without a scratch, did you know that? Marcus Webb. Drunk as a skunk, 3 times the legal limit, and he walked away while our daughter and her husband died on impact. I knew. Of course I knew. I'd sat through every day of his trial, watched him get sentenced to 8 years, out in 5 with good behavior. He went to prison, Margaret. He got out last year. She handed me a photograph. Marcus Webb, older, grayer, but unmistakably him, standing outside a liquor store. Lives in Riverside now. 40 minutes away. Still drinks. How do you know that? She pulled out more photos. Webb at bars, Webb buying bottles, Webb stumbling to his car. The investigator's been watching him for 6 months. And Jim. She hesitated, then pulled out one more photo. This was taken last week. It showed Webb at a playground, watching children play. But it was the woman next to him that made my blood run cold. She was young, maybe mid-20s, pushing a toddler on a swing. She was pregnant. His daughter, Margaret said. Had her when he was in prison. The mother was a pen pal who felt sorry for him. They live together now. Happy little family. The unfairness of it crashed over me like a wave. He'd killed our daughter, our unborn grandchild, and he got to have a family? What are you planning to do with this information? I asked, though I was afraid I already knew. Nothing. Everything. I don't know. She sank back into the rocking chair. Some nights I come out here and plan elaborate revenge. Other nights I just hold these photos and cry. Most nights Sarah talks me out of it. The Sarah you see. She says forgiveness is the only way forward. But how can I forgive him, Jim? How can I forgive God? How can I forgive myself for letting her drive that night? She wanted to stay home. She wasn't feeling well with the morning sickness, but I encouraged her to go to David's company party. A knock at the garage door interrupted us. We both froze. It was 2 a.m. Who would be knocking at this hour? Mr. Patterson? Mrs. Patterson? It's Tom from next door. I saw the light on, wanted to make sure everything's okay. Tom Wheeler, our neighbor of 20 years. Former Marine, current busybody, but well-meaning. I looked at Margaret, who was quickly covering the photographs. Just a minute, Tom, I called out, then whispered to Margaret. We need to tell someone about this. Maybe Tom. No. Promise me, Jim. This stays between us. I opened the door just enough to block Tom's view inside. Everything's fine. Couldn't sleep, thought I'd organize some tools. Tom peered over my shoulder, trying to see inside. At 2 a.m.? Betty thought she saw Margaret coming out here every night this week. We were worried maybe you had someone living in there. You know, with all the homeless problems lately. Just insomnia. Retirement's got us keeping odd hours. He didn't look convinced. If you say so. But Jim, between you and me, Betty's noticed Margaret acting strange lately. Talking to herself at the grocery store, crying in her car in the parking lot. Maybe she should see someone? I appreciate the concern, but we're handling it. After Tom left, I turned back to Margaret. People are noticing. Let them notice. What's the worst that happens? They think I'm a crazy old woman? I've been called worse. She stood, straightening her nightgown. I'm going to bed. We're not done talking about this. No, we're not. But I'm done for tonight. She paused at the door. You can destroy all of this if you want. Tear it down, throw it away. But it won't change anything. Sarah will still be dead. That man will still be living his life. And I'll still be slowly dying inside. After she left, I sat in that makeshift memorial for hours, surrounded by my daughter's ghost. The photographs seemed to watch me, accusing. Why hadn't I protected her? Why hadn't I been a better father? Why was I still failing Margaret when she needed me most? The next morning, I found Margaret in the kitchen making pancakes, Sarah's favorite. She was humming that same lullaby, setting 3 places at the table instead of 2. When she saw me notice the 3rd setting, she didn't explain, didn't apologize. Just kept cooking. We need help, I said. I don't want therapy, Jim. I've been through that after Sarah died. All they wanted to do was medicate me into numbness. At least feeling this pain means I'm still alive, still her mother. Not therapy. Or not just therapy. I pulled out the business card I'd been carrying for 2 years. A support group. For parents who've lost children. She laughed, harsh and brittle. Sit in a circle and cry with strangers? No, thank you. Margaret, you're seeing our dead daughter. You're stalking her killer. You're setting places for ghosts at our table. This isn't grief anymore, it's something else. She slammed the spatula down. You want to know what else it is? It's survival. It's the only way I know how to get through each day without joining her. She turned to face me fully. Do you know what I was doing the night you came home early? I was saying goodbye. I had it all planned out. Pills from when I had my surgery last year. Enough to fall asleep and not wake up. The floor seemed to tilt. Margaret. But then Sarah told me to wait. Said you were coming home early, that you needed me. So I waited. And here we are. Sarah told you? Or you told yourself? Does it matter? The result is the same. I'm still here, aren't I? She turned back to the stove, flipping a pancake with practiced precision. But I won't be for much longer if things don't change. What kind of change? She was quiet for a long moment. Then, justice. Real justice. Not 5 years in minimum security for killing 2.5 people. Margaret, you can't. I'm not going to kill him, if that's what you're worried about. But he needs to know. He needs to understand what he took. And he needs to stop before he does it again. Stop what? She pulled another photograph from her apron pocket. This one showed Webb's car weaving between lanes on the highway, taken from another vehicle. The investigator followed him 3 nights ago. He's driving drunk again, Jim. It's only a matter of time before he kills someone else's daughter. That afternoon, while Margaret napped, she'd been up most of the night again. I drove to Riverside. I told myself I was just going to see, to understand what she'd been obsessing over. But when I parked across from Marcus Webb's house, watching his pregnant partner struggle with grocery bags while he sat on the porch drinking beer at 1 p.m., I understood Margaret's rage. My phone rang. "Margaret. You're there, aren't you?" she said without preamble. The investigator called. Said someone in a blue Honda was parked outside Webb's house. "That's our car, Jim. How did you?" "I've been having him watched for months." "You think he wouldn't notice you?" She sighed. "Come home. We need to talk." When I got back, she was in the garage, sitting in the rocking chair with a box on her lap. Not baby clothes this time, documents. Police reports. Court transcripts. Everything from the accident and trial. She opened the box. But also this. She handed me a letter dated 2 months ago, addressed to Webb but never sent. In Margaret's careful handwriting, it detailed everything: Sarah's life, her dreams, the baby she'd never have. But the last paragraph made my blood run cold. Asterisk, I know what you're doing. I know you're drinking again, driving again, endangering lives again. I have photographs, videos, proof. Stop now, or I'll make sure everyone knows what you are. Your daughter's mother. Your employer. Your parole officer. Everyone. Asterisk. You were going to blackmail him? I was going to save lives. She took the letter back. But I couldn't send it. Sarah wouldn't let me. She says vengeance isn't mine to take. Margaret, Sarah isn't. I know. The scream echoed in the garage. I know she's dead. I know she's not really here. I know I'm talking to empty air and my own guilt and this crushing, endless grief. But it's all I have, Jim. It's the only way I can hear her voice anymore. She collapsed forward, sobbing in a way I hadn't seen since the funeral. I held her while she shook, feeling every one of my 67 years, wondering how we'd gotten here. There's something else, she whispered against my shoulder. The investigator didn't just watch Webb. He looked into the accident itself. Jim, there were discrepancies. She pulled out another folder, this one marked confidential, in red ink. The official report said Webb ran the red light, T-boned Sarah's car. Simple drunk driving accident. But look at this. She showed me traffic camera footage I'd never seen before, grainy but clear enough. Webb's truck running the light, yes, but something else, another car, dark sedan, seemed to push Webb's truck forward just before impact. The investigator found a witness who was never interviewed. Said there were 2 vehicles involved, but the second one fled the scene. The police either missed it or ignored it. Why would they ignore it? Because the second car. She pulled out another photo, this one from a different angle. The license plate was partially visible. The investigator ran what he could see. It matches a fleet vehicle from the district attorney's office. My mind reeled. You're saying someone from the DA's office was involved in Sarah's death? I'm saying someone was chasing Webb, maybe trying to pull him over, and caused him to run that light. They covered it up to avoid liability. Webb took all the blame, did his time, and everyone moved on. Except us. We need to take this to the police. With what? Grainy footage and the word of a witness who's now conveniently moved to Florida and won't return calls. She shook her head. The investigator tried. No one wants to reopen a 15-year-old case. So what do? We make them listen. She stood, suddenly energized. There's a town hall meeting next week. The district attorney will be there. He's running for re-election. We show everyone what really happened. Margaret, that's crazy? Maybe. But it's better than slowly dying in this garage, talking to ghosts. She touched the hospital bed. I'm tired of being quiet, Jim. Tired of being the grieving mother who's supposed to move on and find closure. There is no closure when your child dies. There's just a hole that either swallows you or drives you forward. Over the next week, our house transformed from a tomb of grief into a war room. Margaret contacted journalists, compiled evidence, created presentation boards. The woman who'd been shuffling through her days in a nightgown suddenly blazed with purpose. I helped, partly because the evidence was compelling, mostly because I hadn't seen her this alive in years. We worked side by side, fell into bed exhausted, woke up with renewed determination. It felt like our early days, when we built our business together, united against the world. Tom Wheeler noticed the change immediately. "You two seem better," he said over the fence. "Margaret looks like herself again." If only he knew what we were planning. 3 days before the town hall, Margaret's investigator, a grizzled ex-cop named Danny Torino, came to the house. "I found something," he said, spreading new photos on our kitchen table. "That sedan from the DA's office? It was signed out to Assistant DA Patricia Morse that night. She's now a judge. Circuit Court. Patricia Morse. I knew that name. She'd been at Sarah's funeral, offered condolences, said how sorry she was for our loss. She knew, Margaret said quietly. She stood at our daughter's graveside knowing she was partially responsible, and she said nothing. We don't know that for sure. Danny warned? She might have been pursuing Webb, trying to stop him. Then why hide it? Why not testify? Margaret's hands shook. No, she covered it up to protect her career. And it worked. She's a judge now, while Sarah's in the ground. That night, Margaret didn't go to the garage. She sat at her computer, typing furiously. What are you writing? My statement. For the town hall. She looked up at me, and her eyes were clear for the first time in years. I'm going to tell them everything. About Sarah, the baby, the cover-up. About how grief makes you crazy and crazy makes you brave. They might not let you speak. Then I'll make them listen. She turned back to her screen. I'm done being silent, Jim. Done being appropriate. Done pretending that time heals all wounds when some wounds are meant to stay open, to remind us that justice still matters. The night before the town hall, neither of us slept. Margaret stood in the garage one last time, talking to the empty space where she'd seen Sarah. I'm doing this for you, she whispered. For you and the baby. For every mother who's lost a child to someone's negligence, and never got real answers. I stood in the doorway watching her, wondering if we were about to destroy our quiet life or finally find peace. Maybe both. She says she's proud of me, Margaret said without turning around. Says it's time to let the truth into the light. And what about after? When this is all over? She finally looked at me. Then maybe I can finally let her go. Maybe we both can. The town hall was packed. District Attorney Robert Fleming, running for his 4th term, stood at the podium discussing crime statistics. Judge Patricia Morse sat in the front row, the picture of judicial dignity. Marcus Webb wasn't there. We hadn't expected him to be. When they opened for public comment, Margaret stood. I saw Fleming's aide whisper something to him, probably identifying us as the grieving parents from that old case. He put on his sympathetic face. Mrs. Patterson, please come forward. Margaret walked to the microphone with steady steps, carrying her folder. 15 years ago, my daughter Sarah died in what you called a simple drunk driving accident. She was pregnant. The drunk driver, Marcus Webb, served 5 years. She paused, letting that sink in. But that's not the whole story. Fleming shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Patterson, I understand your grief, but... No, you don't. Margaret's voice cut through the room. You don't understand what it's like to bury your child while knowing the people sworn to pursue justice lied about how she died. She pulled out the traffic camera photos, held them up. There was another car involved that night. A car that fled the scene. A car registered to your office, Mr. Fleming? The room erupted in murmurs. Fleming banged his gavel. Why did he have a gavel at a town hall? Calling for order. These are serious allegations, Mrs. Patterson. Do you have proof? I have traffic footage. A witness statement. And this. She turned to Judge Morse. Your signature on the vehicle log, signing out that exact car on the night my daughter died. You were chasing Webb, weren't you? Trying to stop him? But something went wrong, and you contributed to the crash. Then you covered it up. Judge Moore stood, her face pale but composed. Mrs. Patterson, you're clearly distraught. I have been distraught for 15 years. Margaret's voice broke. Do you know what grief does to a person? It hollows you out until you're talking to ghosts in your garage at 3 a.m., planning reunions with the dead. But you know what's worse than grief? Knowing that justice was never served. Knowing that the people responsible walked away while my daughter didn't. This is harassment, Fleming said. Security. I'm not done. Margaret pulled out more papers. Marcus Webb is driving drunk again. I have photographs, dates, times. He's going to kill someone else, and you're going to let it happen because addressing it means admitting you failed the first time. I stood up then, moving to join my wife. We're not asking for money. We're not suing anyone. We just want the truth acknowledged. We want Webb stopped before he kills again. And we want to know why Patricia Morse was chasing him that night. Judge Morse's composure finally cracked. You want to know why? She stepped forward, ignoring Fleming's attempts to stop her. My sister called me that night. Said she was at a bar, that her ex-boyfriend was there, drunk, threatening her. Marcus Webb. I went to help her, saw him leave, stumbling to his truck. I followed, trying to call for backup, but I was off duty, out of jurisdiction. The room had gone silent. I tried to stop him. She continued, tears streaming down her face. Tried to get him to pull over. I bumped his truck, yes, trying to force him to the shoulder. But he accelerated instead, ran the red light, and... She looked directly at Margaret. And killed your daughter. I've lived with that every day since. Every single day. But you said nothing. Margaret said quietly. At the trial, at the funeral, you said nothing. Fleming told me not to. Said it would complicate the case, might let Webb walk free on a technicality. Said the result would be the same, he'd go to prison. So I stayed quiet. And I've regretted it every day since. Fleming stood, his political career crumbling in real time. Patricia stopped talking. No, Robert. I'm done protecting you and your office. She turned back to us. There's more. Webb didn't just randomly drive drunk that night. He'd been drinking at a bar that was supposed to be closed, one that paid your office, Mr. Fleming, to look the other way on violations. If that had come out during the trial, you're destroying everything. Fleming hissed. Everything was destroyed 15 years ago. Judge Morse replied. When the Pattersons lost their daughter. When I lost my integrity. When you chose politics over justice. Margaret sank into a chair, overwhelmed. I knelt beside her as the room exploded in chaos. Reporters shouting questions, Fleming calling for security, people recording everything on their phones. Jim, Margaret whispered. She's here. Sarah's here. I looked where she was staring and saw nothing but empty air. But Margaret was smiling through her tears, a peaceful expression I hadn't seen in years. She says it's enough? The truth is out. She can rest now. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind. Fleming resigned in disgrace. Judge Morse stepped down from the bench and volunteered to testify in a new investigation. Marcus Webb was arrested for multiple DUIs he'd committed since his release. Danny Torino made sure the evidence was airtight. But the biggest change was in Margaret. The day after the town hall, she began dismantling the shrine in the garage. Not frantically, not sadly, but methodically, with purpose. You don't have to do this, I said, watching her pack away the photographs. Yes, I do. It's time. She held up a picture of Sarah at her college graduation. These belong in albums, not altars. She was our daughter, not our ghost. And the visions? Still seeing her? Margaret was quiet for a moment. No. Not since that night. I think she got what she needed. Or I got what I needed. Maybe there's no difference. We donated the hospital bed to a local hospice. The baby clothes went to the women's shelter. The rocking chair we kept, moving it to the corner of our bedroom where Margaret could sit and remember without being consumed. Tom Wheeler came by with a casserole, his wife's way of apologizing for gossiping. Heard about everything on the news, he said awkwardly. We had no idea what you were going through. Neither did we, I admitted. Sometimes grief makes you lose yourself so completely, you don't realize how far you've drifted until someone shows you the way back. That someone had been Margaret herself, fighting through her delusions and despair to find one last battle worth fighting. 3 months later, we attended Marcus Webb's sentencing, this time for repeated drunk driving and violating parole. He got 10 years, no early release. His daughter's mother was there, holding their toddler, another baby on the way. She looked at us with eyes full of sorrow and understanding. I'm leaving him, she told Margaret quietly outside the courthouse. I won't let my children grow up with that shadow. Thank you for exposing what he really is. Margaret hugged her, this stranger who might have been another victim. Take care of those babies. Love them enough for all of us. A year passed. The garage became just a garage again. I finally cleaned it out properly, installed new lighting, even built a workshop in one corner. Sometimes I'd find Margaret standing in there, not talking to ghosts but simply remembering. Do you miss it? I asked one evening. The feeling that she was still here? I miss her. I'll always miss her. But I don't miss the madness that came with trying to keep her alive in impossible ways. She leaned against me. I was so angry at you for moving on, for working, for living. But you weren't moving on, you were just moving. There's a difference. I should have been here. Should have seen what was happening. You did see. You came home early that night, remember? Right when I needed you most. She smiled sadly. Maybe that was Sarah. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it was just you, knowing somewhere deep down that I was drowning. We started attending the support group I'd suggested. Not to cry with strangers, but to remember with people who understood that some losses never fully heal, they just become part of your landscape, like mountains you learn to navigate around. Patricia Morse wrote us a letter. 8 pages of apology, explanation, and genuine remorse. We didn't forgive her, that wasn't ours to give. But we acknowledged her letter, acknowledged her pain, acknowledged that everyone involved had been broken by that night in different ways. She was a new prosecutor then, Margaret said after reading it for the 10th time. Scared, ambitious, making split-second decisions. One bad choice leading to another, then another, until the lie became easier than the truth. You're defending her? No. I'm understanding her. There's a difference. She folded the letter carefully. Sarah would want us to understand. She always saw the good in people, even when they couldn't see it themselves. The morning of the 15th anniversary arrived with unexpected sunshine. October in Ohio usually meant gray skies and dying leaves, but that day dawned clear and bright, as if Sarah herself had arranged the weather. Margaret was already awake when I opened my eyes, standing at our bedroom window in her robe, watching the sunrise paint our yard gold. Couldn't sleep? I asked, though I knew the answer. Didn't want to, she replied without turning. I wanted to feel every minute of today. Not hide from it, not sleep through it. Just feel it. I joined her at the window, my arm around her shoulders. Below, the backyard was already transformed. We'd spent the previous day stringing lights between the trees, setting up tables, arranging chairs in conversation circles. It looked like a wedding reception waiting to happen, not a memorial for our long-dead daughter. Are you sure about this? I asked. It's not too late to cancel, make it something smaller. Margaret turned to me, and I saw determination mixed with something else, anticipation, maybe even excitement. For 15 years, we've marked this day with silence and tears. Sarah wouldn't want that. She'd want laughter, stories, That terrible punch recipe she always made for parties. The one with too much rum? That's the one. She smiled, and it reached her eyes. I made a batch last night. It's in the garage fridge. The garage. Even now, a year after dismantling her shrine, the word carried weight between us. But the space had been reclaimed, transformed into something living rather than a monument to death. My workshop occupied one corner, her gardening supplies another. The rocking chair still sat by the window, but now it held books rather than baby clothes that would never be worn. Michael called, Margaret said, moving to get dressed. Their flight landed an hour ago. They're picking up the rental car. Our son Michael had been our anchor through the worst of it, even from across the country. He'd called every day during Margaret's darkest period, never judging, never pushing, just checking in. His partner, James, had sent care packages, books, tea, photos of their travels, small reminders that life continued beyond our grief. Did they say anything about? I couldn't finish the question, but Margaret knew. The adoption? Yes. They're bringing pictures. The little girl, Lily, she's 3. Been in foster care since birth. The papers should be final by Christmas. She paused in selecting a dress. They still want to give her Sarah as a middle name. Lily Sarah Chin Patterson. The doorbell rang before I could respond. Too early for guests, the gathering wasn't until afternoon. I headed downstairs, still in my pajamas, to find Danny Torino on our porch holding a box. Sorry for the early hour, he said, shifting uncomfortably. The ex-cop turned private investigator who'd helped us uncover the truth had become something like a friend over the past year. Wanted to drop this off before the crowd arrived. What is it? Letters. From the trial, the investigation. Some folks wanted to say things but didn't know how to reach out directly. He handed me the box. There's also something from Patricia Morse. Patricia Morse. The former judge had served 6 months in minimum security for obstruction of justice, her legal career destroyed but her conscience finally clear. She'd written us several times from prison, letters Margaret read but never answered. Is she coming today? I asked. Would you want her to? I thought about it. I don't know. Margaret invited everyone who loved Sarah. I'm not sure where Patricia fits in that. Danny nodded. She knows. She sent that instead. He gestured to the box. Said to tell you she'll be thinking of Sarah today, remembering her properly for the first time. After Danny left, I brought the box to the kitchen where Margaret was making coffee. She looked at it for a long moment, then opened the envelope on top, Patricia's letter. Dear Jim and Margaret. Today marks 15 years since a moment that changed all our lives irrevocably. I won't intrude on your gathering, but I wanted you to know that I've established a memorial scholarship in Sarah's name at the university. It will support young women studying education as Sarah was. It's not redemption, nothing could be, but perhaps it's a way for her legacy to continue in ways that tragedy cut short. Asterisk. I think of you both often. I think of Sarah daily. Not with the guilty visions that haunted me for years, but with a clear memory of the vibrant young woman whose life was stolen by a confluence of failures, including my own. Asterisk. Thank you for forcing the truth into the light. It destroyed my career but saved my soul. I hope today brings you peace. Asterisk. Patricia Morse. Margaret folded the letter carefully, placing it back in the box. We'll read the others later. Today isn't about the past, it's about celebrating who Sarah was. By noon, the house was full. Michael and James arrived first, their faces bright with nervous energy. James carried an album of photos, Lily playing at a park, Lily finger painting, Lily laughing at something off camera. She had Sarah's same infectious smile, though they shared no blood. The agency says we can bring her home next month, Michael said, his voice thick with emotion. We've already painted her room. That soft yellow Sarah always loved. Sarah's college roommate arrived next, then her high school friends, teachers who remembered her, neighbors who'd watched her grow up. Even the Methodist minister who'd performed her wedding came, older now but still carrying that gentle presence that had comforted us at her funeral. Tom and Betty Wheeler from next door brought their famous potato salad and an apology. "We should have been better neighbors this past year," Betty said, squeezing Margaret's hand. "Should have seen you were struggling instead of just gossiping about it." "You were worried," Margaret replied graciously. "That's a form of caring, even if it wasn't what we needed then." The afternoon unfolded in waves of memory. People shared stories I'd never heard. Sarah sneaking out to attend a midnight Harry Potter book release, organizing a secret Valentine's delivery service in high school to make sure no one felt left out, staying up all night to help a friend through a breakup even though she had finals the next day. She had this gift, her college professor said, drink in hand, of making everyone feel seen. In a class of 30, she knew everyone's name by the second day, remembered their interests, their struggles. She would have been an extraordinary teacher. Margaret circulated through the crowd like a butterfly, touching down here and there, collecting stories like flowers. I watched her from the porch, marveling at her transformation. The woman who'd spent months talking to ghosts in our garage had become this radiant host, celebrating rather than mourning. "She looks good," a voice said beside me. I turned to find Robert Fleming, the former district attorney. My first instinct was anger. How dare he show up here? But then I saw his face, aged beyond his years, etched with genuine remorse. "You have some nerve coming here," I said quietly. "I know. I almost didn't. But I needed to. I needed to say this in person." He took a breath. "I failed you. Failed Sarah. Failed the entire concept of justice I swore to uphold. I chose politics over truth, and that choice rippled out in ways that destroyed lives. It did. I'm in therapy now. Sounds ridiculous, a 60-year-old man just learning to confront his choices. But my therapist says acknowledgement is the first step. He met my eyes. So I'm acknowledging. What I did was wrong. Covering up Patricia's involvement, protecting the bar that served Webb, prioritizing my career, all of it was wrong. And I'm sorry. I could have thrown him out. Could have made a scene. But looking at this broken man, I remembered something Margaret had said. Everyone involved had been shattered by that night in different ways. "Thank you for saying that," I said finally. "I can't offer forgiveness, that's not mine to give. But I appreciate you coming here, saying it to my face." He nodded, started to leave, then turned back. "Your wife's speech at the town hall, it changed things. Not just the investigation, but the whole culture at the DA's office. We have a memorial wall now, photos of victims, to remind us who we really serve. Sarah's picture is there, front and center." After he left, I found Margaret in the garage, of all places, refilling the punch bowl. She wasn't talking to ghosts, just humming that old lullaby while she worked. "Fleming was here," I said. "I know. I invited him." "You what?" She looked up at me with those green eyes that had first captured me 45 years ago. "Forgiveness isn't about them, Jim. It's about us. About not carrying poison in our hearts. Sarah taught me that, during those long nights when I thought I saw her. Whether it was really her or just my mind trying to heal itself, the message was the same: let go of the anger before it consumes you." "And have you? Let go?" "Most days. Today, yes. Today I choose to remember joy instead of pain." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that reminded me of Sarah's nursery, Margaret clinked her glass, calling everyone to attention. The crowd gathered on the lawn, faces turned up to where she stood on the deck. 15 years ago, we lost our daughter, our grandchild, our future as we'd imagined it. For a long time, I got lost in that grief. I built shrines, saw visions, nearly followed her into the dark. She looked at me, and I climbed the steps to stand beside her. But Jim pulled me back. The truth pulled me back. All of you pulled me back. She raised her glass higher. Sarah would have been 41 today. She'd probably have teenagers driving her crazy, a mortgage she complained about, gray hairs she'd blame on her kids. She'd be living a beautifully ordinary life, and we'd give anything for that ordinariness. A few people wiped at their eyes. Margaret continued, her voice strong. But that's not what happened. Instead, Sarah remains forever 26, forever pregnant with possibility, forever on the cusp of everything she might have been. And while that's tragic, it's also a gift. She never had to face disappointment, never had to compromise her dreams, never had to watch her parents grow old and frail. She's preserved in amber. Someone called out, Sarah's best friend from high school. Perfect and untouchable. Yes, Margaret agreed. But we're not preserved. We're alive, messy, complicated, still making mistakes and still learning from them. And that's what she'd want, for us to live fully, not as monuments to grief but as people who knew how to love and kept loving even after loss. She looked at Michael and James. She'd want new children to carry her name and her spirit, even if not her DNA. She'd want her friends to tell embarrassing stories about her at parties. She'd want her father to finally clean out that garage and build something instead of storing sadness. Everyone laughed, including me. So here's to Sarah, Margaret concluded, who taught us that love doesn't die even when people do. Here's to the baby who never was but was loved anyway. Here's to truth, even when it's painful. Here's to second chances and third chances and as many chances as it takes to get it right. And here's to moving forward, not moving on, because there's a difference. Everyone drank, and the party continued until well past midnight. Stories flowed like wine, laughter echoed across the yard, and for hours we managed to celebrate rather than mourn. The last guest left around 2 a.m. Michael and James were staying in Sarah's old room, now a guest room, though her high school trophies still lined one shelf. Margaret and I sat in the garage, exhausted but oddly exhilarated, sharing the last of that too strong punch. Do you think she was here tonight? Margaret asked. Really here, not just in our memories? I considered the question. I think she was here in every story, every laugh, every tear. Whether that's her spirit or just the impact she had on everyone she met, I don't know. Does it matter? No, Margaret said after a moment. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we're still here, still together, still able to feel joy alongside the sorrow. We sat in comfortable silence, two old people in a garage that had witnessed madness and recovery, despair and hope. The rocking chair sat empty in the corner, but it no longer felt like a shrine, just a piece of furniture with history. I love you, Jim, Margaret said suddenly. Thank you for not giving up on me when I gave up on myself. That's what marriage is, I replied, taking her hand. Holding each other up when we can't stand alone. You'd have done the same for me. I would have, she agreed, though probably with less patience. You know how I am. We laughed, and the sound filled the garage, chasing away any lingering ghosts. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, it always did. But tonight, on this anniversary that had once been about ending, we'd found a new beginning. As we finally headed inside, Margaret paused at the garage door, looking back at the space that had been her sanctuary and her prison. No more ghosts? I asked. No more ghosts, she confirmed. Just memories. Good ones and bad ones, all mixed together like life tends to be. We turned off the light and closed the door, leaving the garage in peaceful darkness. Above us, stars wheeled in their courses, indifferent to human grief and human joy. But we weren't looking at the stars. We were looking at each other, two survivors who'd found their way back from the edge, scarred but not broken, grieving but not destroyed. The house was quiet as we climbed the stairs to our bedroom. In the guest room, we could hear Michael and James talking softly, planning their future with little Lily Sarah. Life continuing, as it always did, as it had to. Margaret was already asleep by the time I finished getting ready for bed, her face peaceful in the moonlight. I watched her breathe, this woman who'd walked through madness and emerged on the other side, not unchanged but undefeated. Good night, Sarah, I whispered to the darkness, not because I thought she was there, but because saying her name kept her real, kept her part of our continuing story. Tomorrow would be an ordinary day. We'd wake up, have coffee, go about our business. The garage would just be a garage. Our grief would be manageable, worn smooth by time and truth. We'd be okay, not perfect, not healed, but okay. And for two people who'd survived the unsurvivable, okay was more than enough. It was everything. 5 years later. The little girl's laughter fills our backyard like birdsong. Lily Sarah Chin Patterson, now 8 years old, pushes her baby brother on the swing gym installed last summer, the same spot where Sarah's swing set stood 40 years ago. Michael and James adopted Timothy 2 years after Lily, completing their family in ways that completed ours too. I watch from the kitchen window, my hands covered in flour from the cookies we're baking. Lily insisted on chocolate chip, Sarah's favorite. She never knew her aunt, but she carries her spirit, that same infectious joy, that gift for making everyone feel special. Jim's in his workshop in the garage, building a dollhouse for Lily's birthday. At 72, his hands aren't as steady, but his determination remains intact. Through the window, I can see him consulting the plans, occasionally looking up at Sarah's photo on his workbench. Not a shrine, just a reminder of why we keep going. The garage holds no ghosts now, only tools and half-finished projects, and the rocking chair where I sit to watch him work. Sometimes Lily joins me there, asking about the aunt she never met. I tell her stories, real ones, not the fantasies I once clung to. How Sarah couldn't carry a tune but sang anyway. How she put smiley faces on her students' papers. How she would have adored her niece and nephew. Marcus Webb died in prison last year. Liver failure, the inevitable consequence of a lifetime of drinking. I felt nothing when I heard, not satisfaction, not anger, just a closing of a very long chapter. Patricia Morse sent a card, now teaching at a community college, helping kids who remind her that redemption is possible. Grandma Margaret! Lily calls, running inside with leaves in her hair. Can we visit the special place? The special place. That's what she calls the cemetery where Sarah rests. We go monthly now, not from grief but from remembrance. Lily leaves drawings, Timothy babbles at the headstone, and we tell Sarah about the life that continues in her absence. After cookies, I promise, and Lily hugs me with sticky hands. This is what survival looks like. Chocolate chip cookies and grandchildren who aren't technically ours but completely are. It's Jim finally retiring fully, spending his days building toys instead of companies. It's me learning to see clearly without the fog of grief, to remember without drowning. Sarah would be 46 now. Instead, she's forever 26, forever about to begin. But we're still here, still living, still proving that love transcends loss, that families can be rebuilt from ashes, that even the deepest wounds eventually become scars you can bear. The timer dings. The cookies are ready. Life continues.